Retirement is supposed to require a big number, a clean number, one that sounds safe when you say it out loud. $1 million, maybe more. That belief feels solid until you look at what actually happens. Every year, millions of people stop working with less than $500,000 saved. Not influencers, not edge cases, regular people. And somehow, life doesn't collapse. Bills get paid, food shows up, healthcare happens, time keeps moving. That creates a problem, because either all these retirees are quietly failing or the way retirement is explained to us is missing something important. Let's slow this down. If you take $500,000 and apply the classic rule everyone repeats, the 4% rule, you get about $20,000 a year. That's roughly $1,650 a month. Say that number out loud. Does it sound comfortable? Exactly. So, what's going on? Are retirees cutting corners you don't see? Are they depending on help they don't admit? Or are we asking the wrong question from the start? Retirement isn't lived as a spreadsheet total. It's lived in months. Rent doesn't care about your net worth. Groceries don't scale politely, and some expenses fade once work disappears. This is where the common story starts to feel thin, because many people retiring with less money aren't smarter. They aren't luckier. They're structured differently. Different income layers, different assumptions, different trade-offs made years earlier, often without realizing it. Once you notice those patterns, $500,000 stops feeling like a verdict and starts feeling like a design problem. One design creates pressure forever. The other creates stability that looks boring but works. If this already feels clearer than what you usually hear, hit that subscribe button. Because we're going deeper into what nobody wants to say out loud about retirement planning. Next, we need to dismantle the belief that quietly ruins most retirement plans, even for people with far more than $500,000, because until that belief is gone, the numbers won't matter. That belief is simple and it feels responsible. If I save enough, retirement will take care of itself. It sounds logical, it sounds safe, and it quietly breaks plans, because saving is only half the equation. Spending behavior finishes the job. Two retirees can leave work with the same $500,000. One feels constant pressure, the other feels oddly fine. The difference isn't discipline, it's structure. Most plans assume expenses stay flat. They don't. Work-related costs vanish. Commuting, lunches out, clothes you only wore for meetings. That $300 a month you didn't notice? That's $3,600 a year that no longer needs funding. But new expenses appear too. Healthcare doesn't ask permission. It accelerates later. Property maintenance becomes harder to DIY. Help costs money. So the real mistake isn't not saving enough, it's assuming life behaves evenly. Another belief slips in right after. I'll withdraw the same amount every year. On paper, that looks clean. In real life, it's fragile. Real retirees don't spend in straight lines, they spend in waves. Some years cost less, some years surprise you. A roof needs replacing. A grandchild gets married. A medical procedure isn't covered. Those who survive with smaller portfolios adjust. They pause spending when markets dip. They lean on fixed income when volatility spikes. They wait instead of forcing withdrawals. That flexibility matters more than the number itself. This is why calculators mislead. They ask for a lump sum, then assume perfect behavior for 30 years. No illness, no boredom spending, no changes in priorities. Real life ignores that model. And people retiring with less money learn this early, because they have to. That constraint quietly trains better habits. Not panic, not deprivation, adaptation. This is uncomfortable but important. Many people with larger portfolios fail because they never built flexibility into the system. They optimize for accumulation, not for living. And that's why $500,000 can feel impossible to one person and workable to another. But numbers still matter. So let's look at the data itself. What retirees actually have, how long it needs to last, and why the duration matters more than the total. This is where the numbers get uncomfortable but also clarifying. The median retirement savings in the US for people in their early 60s is well below $200,000, not the bottom, the middle, which means $500,000 already puts you far above the typical retiree. That doesn't mean it's enough. It means expectations are distorted. Now layer in income. Social Security isn't a bonus, it's a foundation. The average benefit today sits around $1,800 a month. For couples, it's often more. Some have pensions still. Others have rental income or part-time work they actually enjoy. Combine that with a $500,000 portfolio. Even a conservative withdrawal, say $1,500 a month, suddenly turns into $3,300 monthly. That's not luxury, but it's not nothing. And remember what changed? No payroll taxes, no retirement contributions, often no mortgage, the kids are independent, you're not funding college, you're not climbing any ladders. This is the mental shift most people never make. Retirement income stacks. It doesn't come from one source. Portfolios don't replace work income, they fill gaps. The real danger isn't having less money, it's assuming withdrawals must stay rigid. People who succeed with smaller portfolios don't lock themselves into a fixed lifestyle. They adjust travel years. They delay big purchases. They spend more time than money. That's not sacrifice, that's control. And this is the psychological turn. Freedom in retirement isn't about precision, it's about optionality. The ability to say, not this year, we'll wait. Ironically, retirees with modest portfolios often sleep better because they learned flexibility early. Those with larger portfolios sometimes struggle more because their plan assumes nothing ever changes. Longevity isn't the enemy. Rigidity is. Living longer only becomes dangerous when income can't adapt. And once you see retirement through that lens, the question shifts. Not, is $500,000 enough? But, how resilient is the system I'm building? That question changes everything, because retirement doesn't fail all at once. It fails quietly. A little more spending than planned, a little less flexibility than expected, a few years longer than modeled, and suddenly the math feels tight. People who retire with less than $500,000 aren't winning because they found a secret number. They win because they stopped chasing certainty and built adaptability instead. They don't ask, how much can I withdraw forever? They ask, what can I adjust this year? That mindset compounds. A smaller portfolio with flexible decisions often lasts longer than a larger portfolio locked into rigid assumptions. This doesn't mean effort doesn't matter. It means where you put effort matters more. Let me be specific. The retirees who make this work focus on 3 things that sound boring but deliver results. First, they track real monthly needs. Not theoretical budgets, not what they think they should spend. Actual recurring costs. Housing, utilities, insurance, food, medication, transportation, the non-negotiables. Everything else becomes variable, discretionary, optional, not forever, just for that year, that month, that season. Second, they understand which costs are truly fixed and which ones pretend to be. Your phone bill feels fixed until you realize you're paying for unlimited data you never use. Your car insurance feels set until you shop it. Your subscriptions accumulate until you audit them. Most people never do this work during their earning years, so they retire carrying expense bloat they don't even see. The retirees who succeed with less, they see it, they trim it, not out of fear, out of awareness. Third, they let income sources stack instead of forcing one to carry everything. Social Security covers the basics. Portfolio withdrawals cover the variables. A small pension, if they have one, creates breathing room. Part-time work in early retirement extends the timeline. None of this requires genius. It requires honesty. And most financial advice skips honesty because it's not exciting. Now let's address what nobody wants to talk about. Healthcare. Because this is where the $500,000 retirement either survives or collapses, and it's the part most calculators underestimate. Medicare starts at 65. Before that, you're on your own. If you retire at 62, that's 3 years of private insurance. Depending on your state and health, that could be $500 to $1,500 a month, sometimes more. That's not a small gap. That's $6,000 to $18,000 a year, and it comes right when your portfolio is most vulnerable, early in retirement, before Social Security kicks in, while you're still adjusting to not having a paycheck. This is why early retirement with $500,000 is riskier than retiring at 65 with the same amount, not because you're worse at planning, because the bridge costs more, but even after Medicare, costs don't disappear. Part B premiums, Part D for prescriptions, Medigap or Advantage plans. Dental and vision aren't covered. Hearing aids aren't covered. Long-term care isn't covered. The average couple retiring today will spend over $300,000 on healthcare throughout retirement. Some more, some less. But it's real. And it's not optional. So, how do people with smaller portfolios handle this? 3 ways. 1, they work longer, even part-time, even just enough to keep employer health coverage until Medicare. That alone can save tens of thousands of dollars. 2, they plan for Medicare timing. They don't retire at 62 and hope. They retire at 64 or 65 when the coverage gap is smallest. 3, they build health into their lifestyle early, not as a luxury, as infrastructure, because preventing expensive conditions is cheaper than treating them. This isn't about being perfect, it's about being intentional. The retirees who fail often ignore health costs until they hit. The ones who succeed budget for them up front. Boring, effective. Let's talk about the thing that terrifies people most: running out of money before running out of time. This fear is real, and it's valid, but it's also often based on a misunderstanding of how retirement actually unfolds. Most retirement calculators assume you spend the same amount every year, adjusted for inflation, for 30 or 40 years straight. That's not how real retirees live. Spending in retirement follows a curve. It starts moderate. It often increases slightly in the early years when you're healthy and active. Travel, hobbies, the things you deferred while working. Then it plateaus. You've done the big trips. You've settled into routines. Spending stabilizes. Then it declines. This happens naturally as you age. You travel less. You go out less. Your world gets smaller, not because you're failing, because priorities shift. Healthcare costs may rise, but discretionary spending drops. Often, they offset each other. This is called the retirement spending smile. It's U-shaped, higher at the start, lower in the middle, sometimes higher at the end if long-term care becomes necessary. Understanding this changes everything, because if spending declines naturally, your portfolio doesn't need to fund maximum withdrawals for 30 straight years. It needs to fund a curve. People with smaller portfolios who succeed intuitively understand this. They spend more in the early active years when it matters. They spend less later when it doesn't. People with larger portfolios who struggle often live in constant fear of the worst-case scenario. They never adjust. They never relax. They die with money they were too afraid to use. Longevity risk is real, but underliving is a risk too, and nobody talks about that. The goal isn't to spend every dollar perfectly. The goal is to live fully within the resources you have, knowing you can adjust as you go. So here's where we land. Can you retire on $500,000? The answer is the same as most honest answers in finance. It depends. It depends on your income stack, Social Security, pensions, part-time work, rental income. All of it matters. It depends on your spending structure, fixed costs versus flexible costs, how much you can adjust, how much you're willing to adjust. It depends on your timeline. Retiring at 62 is different from retiring at 67. 3 more years of contributions, 3 fewer years of withdrawals. That spread is enormous. It depends on your health, both your actual health and your family history. Some people need more buffer, some need less. It depends on your geography. $500,000 in San Francisco is not the same as $500,000 in Tulsa. Location dictates cost of living, and cost of living dictates feasibility. But most of all, it depends on your mindset, because the people who retire successfully with less money aren't denying reality. They're designing around it. They built flexibility into the plan. They learned to adjust. They stopped chasing perfection and started living adaptability. Retirement isn't a number you hit and forget. It's a system you build and refine. It's boring, it's iterative, and it works. Consistency beats heroics, awareness beats optimism, and simple systems beat perfect ones. Being above average here isn't about earning more, it's about designing better, tracking real monthly needs, understanding which costs are fixed and which aren't, letting income sources stack instead of forcing one to carry everything. That's how ordinary people retire with numbers that look impossible on paper and manageable in real life. No hype, no miracles, just clarity, time, and structure. If this reframed how you think about retirement, subscribe for explanations that stay calm when the internet gets loud, because real wealth isn't flashy. It's quiet, boring, and extremely effective. Drop a comment if you're rethinking what enough actually means. Let's talk about it.